Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mini Metro. This time, this will actually be a successful run of the Hong Kong's 8 achievement, which is from... Actually, I'm just going to read out the description here. Deliver 1,100 passengers in Hong Kong with no more than 8 stations per line. So, generally, this achievement is very easy for the game to give you a bit of grief on, really, because it's, The reality is that you may not always get a line at the end of every week, and as a result, you may find yourself overflowing with stations, and as such, it's pretty easy to get really frustrated at this particular achievement. The other thing is also that you will need additional tunnels at some stage, mainly due to the way that the stations spawn. It's pretty much a given that you will have a bunch of stations spawning on the left, where there is sort of a bunch of isolated islands as well, some very far away stations, which definitely can make life a little more problematic. So, and the other main thing is that it's very easy to forget that each line can only have a maximum 8 stations, so unless you're very meticulous in your counting to some level, it's very easy to accidentally deny yourself the achievement. So, I probably don't have anything additional to say apart from what I've already said in the previous video, but, nevertheless, I'll still sort of just go through some of my thoughts that went through in my head while playing this. To be honest, when I was playing it, I actually recorded the footage yesterday and obviously doing post-commentary now, and I wasn't actually really thinking too much. It was like I was just in this very zen sort of mood, and I was just like, oh, let me pull up Mini Metro because I haven't played it in a week, and then I'll just put some background music on, background talking on, and then play the game. And then when I finished, I just realized I hit 1100. So I was just like, yay! I can release a new Mini Metro video for once. So I think the obviously the most important thing is to be meticulous. And just to remember that after any station spawns, before you adjust any of the 16 stations, make sure you count how many stations there are on each line, because that's pretty much the main requirement of this achievement. And what else am I thinking? The other main thing is that, in my opinion, there will be in 1 week, whenever possible, you should take. No, I'm not facing it right. Basically, throughout the whole run, up until you hit 1100, in 1 week, I would recommend taking 2 additional tunnels, and that's the maximum you should take. But some people may not be so comfortable, and part of it is it's very easy to want to have additional tunnels, just for a bit of padding, or a bit like a safety net in case you ever get some stations that spawn very weirdly, and you may want to sort of like readjust your lines to be a little more efficient. But one of the things that this achievement makes you realize is that you easily get very tight on resources, and the most important resources, in my opinion, are pretty much the train lines, and the fact that you can have maximum 4 locomotives to a line means that you obviously have to rely on having additional trains to be able to ferry your passengers around. So the most obvious thing, relatively obvious, is that you will still want to structure your line such that you have a fairly good distribution of stations. So like a good example would be the Green Line. Since there is no 2 adjoining circle stations, there's always a different station. There's always a different shape every station. And an example of a not so great distribution would be on the Red Line on the bottom, where you can see 3 circle stations in a row. And basically, one good thing of having multiple trains on a line is that when given that you have a good distribution of stations, there will always be like some customers that will just hop on, some customers will hop off, and it sort of just keeps the general population, it'll just keep the general customers being moved around and, relatively satisfied. Whereas on the Red Line, for example, it's very easy for the red stations to have a congestion of customers, mainly because after a while you will start to notice how the trains are picking up customers. And it's I haven't got it in a form that I can actually like describe right now, but it's definitely one of those things that you can just look and see and understand what's happening. And in an intuitive sense, as much as I hate to say that, that's sort of how you sort of just recognize it. And as much as I hate to say you know you should rely on your intuition, because I'm someone who likes to really quantify everything with some kind of abstract theory or abstract observation, that sort of thing. But that's I just haven't had a lot of time nor a lot of mental energy to really just sit down and sort of just put into words what I'm like trying to say at that point. But I assume that most of you who have been playing the game long enough, well, relatively long enough, will understand what I'm getting at there. So it's the end of another week, and this is where I've just picked. This is from memory. This is the only week where I've picked up an additional pair of tunnels. This was mainly due to having the bit of flexibility, and as you can see, I've extended the green line to become a loop, and just to really just help ferry customers around. And having the additional tunnels is actually really handy, because it's by that stage sometimes you will be unlucky enough to get a station spawning in that very small island in the sort of like between the green and the blue lines. And that basically means, well, you know, you need to you're gonna need a couple of additional tunnels to take care of that. The other thing that is also key is sort of the placement of unique stations. And I know I definitely mentioned this in the previous video, but if you are able to sort of like place a unique station at the intersection of two lines, that's definitely one particular strategy you can use. Although from memory, I sort of just I'm sort of like just not really not really stuck to it so much. And because at this stage when I was playing, I wasn't really thinking so hard about how I wanted to rearrange things. It was more just like, you know, my brain was off, and everything was just in my passive memory, and I was just only really keeping track of like the customers, the trains, how many trains there are, how much congestion is happening, and how much I need to react. Because at this point, after you've been playing Mini Metro for a while, you sort of just become very good at reacting, but also anticipating. And after a while, you just start to recognize what things are happening, such as some of the easier things I pointed out before, especially with the circle stations on the bottom of the red line. Them being in conjunction, them being next together just basically means that there can be congestion issues, basically. This is if you just see where I just adjusted the blue line, which was another sort of just strategy I kept in mind. And I was just like thinking, well, if I had to start in the middle, like one before the intersection, then this is another of those things that I haven't quite been able to really put into some kind of words. But at the time, I know when I did this, I was thinking, you know, this would definitely work for whatever intuitive reason I had in my head. It was just, at this stage, literally my intuition speaking. So we're on 4 lines, and it's nearing the end of another week, and I would definitely be looking forward to having another train line, which we certainly did get. I should point out that it's in certain attempts of this achievement, is if you find yourself not getting a line when all your current lines are at capacity, that means all lines already have like 8 stations on each of them, and like there's really no way you can keep them there's really no way that you can sort of just keep them together without like maybe one line acting on its own. Then it's probably not worth the extra effort to sort of just keep continuing, because that was pretty much my attitude towards this achievement. Because there were, I mean, it was like sometimes if I didn't get a line, then I'm just like, well, I can probably struggle for a bit, but ultimately it's probably much easier to reset the game and then just, you know, hope for a better streak, hope for better resources at the end of this week. So with this acquisition on a new line, I'm obviously sort of trying to reorder my lines around just to alleviate the resources around a little. I know my orange line placement hasn't been very good, but it was I remember thinking at the time that distribution of stations is more important than sort of like then sort of like being able then sort of like giving the train less to travel, because the like if you look at the pink line right now, I obviously favor distribution stations, whereas I guess a more lazy person might just loop the 2 triangle stations in a row, then 2 circle stations in a row. And quite frankly, I really did not pay much attention as to how well. It was more like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on even distribution stations. And with that in mind, now that I look at it now, there was actually not very good rearrangement of the red line, because I ended up with 5 circle stations in a row. And at the time I was thinking, well, I could use the orange line just to help mitigate some of the troubles the red line is having. But I think what I should have paid attention to and was not completely aware of was basically the train behavior, because while I understand the train behavior on a intuitive level when it comes to like 5 consecutive circle stations in a row, I hadn't really like sat down, looked at it, see what's happening, why is it happening, and I think in the back of my head I was basically like hoping that the what am I thinking? That the red trains would deposit some of the customers at a circle station, and then the orange trains would take some of the triangle customers from there and then move it to the closer triangle station. But given now that I'm reordering the orange line, that's probably didn't work out too well. Although truth be told, I probably didn't remember. I just remember feeling that that current situation wasn't working out for me, so it was just time to reorder a bunch of things again. So I'm still playing it on fairly fast speed, which was, again, a byproduct of my laziness and sort of just wanted to rush things through a little. There's an unattended station at the top, which I remember noticing, but sort of like didn't pay too much attention to for the time being, because it was, well, yeah, I was just in a very lazy mood. And admittedly, there are a couple of things I could have definitely done a bit better, as well as, say, for example, some of the angles on, like, say, the blue line. I think the green line was pretty much the best I could have done without using additional tunnels. Certainly, that little loop at the top of the pink line could have been improved a little. And then at the end of week 5 only. Okay. At the end of week 5, it was because I had already taken a pair of tunnels. It made best sense to grab the carriage. Now, carriages in this particular achievement are actually not as useful as I thought they would be, and I think it's mainly I'm trying to think. Well, basically, you want a carriage on the train when there's like additional capacity at the end of the line, or like when it's very easy for a line to have a build up at 1M for whatever particular reason it might be. And but it's what am I trying to say? It's like carriages can end up being useless if you're already having good flow on that line. So like maybe you would have noticed at the beginning that when I got a carriage and put it on the green line, the carriage wasn't really put to much use except for maybe 1 or 2 additional customers, so that's definitely something that's sort of just worth keeping an eye on and sort of just taking note of whether having a carriage is useful or not. Definitely there is good flow on the green line, as most of the stations are pretty clean, not so congested, as opposed to the blue and red lines, which is now fairly long, and distance is definitely becoming an issue, and with congestion happening on the pink line as well. With again, it's very awkward and very inefficient routing system, which I am a bit embarrassed about, but part of me just wants to say, well, since this was obviously a successful run, then, it's like, what the hey, why does it matter? And it's actually interesting to think about, because some people are just happy once they get the achievement, and other people are like, well, you could have done this and this and this and that and this and that better. And I can see both sides of the story, because like one part is about consistently improving yourself, consistently learning from the game and so on, and others are sort of just happy to get the achievement because it means that they've reached a skill level that was sufficient enough to be able to complete that achievement. And of course, with the general reward model of that sense of satisfaction when you've got that achievement, it's also a recognition of your ability to obtain that achievement. So yeah, I went on a tangent there. So it's pretty much all I can say is that at this, when it gets closer, when it gets past 1,000 or maybe even 900, you'll find yourself having to rely on micromanaging. I should point out that I was actually very lucky not to have a station spawn on that small island between the teardrop and the triangle station, between the green and blue lines. That definitely would have messed things up a little, and most likely for most people attempting this achievement. So it's yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's probably more a luck thing that I was able to get this achievement as opposed to my previous video, which I should probably rewatch at some stage. But nevertheless, I to be honest, at this stage I really wasn't paying attention to my numbers. I was just like focused on micromanagement and just listening to whatever I had in the background, and I was actually quite surprised to see that I had broken 1100 by the end of it. And yeah, at this stage, since I'm sort of doing very slow managing, I was like, and then I was like, and I was like, oh crap, I actually went over 1100. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy to have finally got this achievement, and there's still one more for me to do, the Auckland one, which I'm having so much trouble with, but I'll get something there eventually. So with that, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.